all of us have a digestive system, and 90% of us have one that doesn't feel very good all the time. And we really should feel really good in our guts, in our digestive system. We want to fix where our health comes from. So good digestion builds good blood. And so when we are eating things that are processing properly and we feel amazing from it, you'll know that you have like really rich and nutritious blood. And that blood, good blood, keeps your body healthy. So often when people are sick in any way, it can go back to their blood. So one of the doctor's offices that I've worked in, that's alternative medicine, they do a lot of blood testing. So they'll even like look at it under the microscope and they'll tell you exactly what's going on in there. Someone that doesn't have really good health and they don't feel great, and then they can see from the pictures of their blood like what's going on. Well, what's next? Now what do I do? Right? And so then that's kind of where this comes into play. So maybe you or someone you know has something that's going on in your GI that you've had actually diagnosed, and then it's a little bit easier for someone like me to kind of look at it and kind of help them get back on track. Dig into the connection between what's going on inside of your gut and what you're either putting inside of you or what you're exposed to, and like emotions, like anxiety and stuff, and that can affect our digestive system too. And I have this belief that nature provides everything that we need for good health. So if something didn't come from nature, our body isn't deficient of it. Then that's not to say that there's not things out there that can totally help us, especially in like emergency situations or to get us like back on track. But just knowing that like there are natural things, whether it's homeopathics or essential oils or the food that we eat, it could be herbs, whether it's herbal tea or taking tinctures or herbal supplements or just even vitamin supplements too. Could be things that could help you naturally. 10 things that you could take home from tonight that you can do that are free, that are easy, and it's good for everyone. Now, there's not many more than these 10 things that I could say fits everyone's box, okay? Because each one of us is an individual, and a big thing about Ayurvedic medicine or understanding of the human body is that we're all different. So we're all unique, and although like I have a really good understanding of how the digestive system works, like we know, where food comes in and then what happens and where it goes, it doesn't mean that it behaves the same in all of us. And so that's what's different about each one of us. And so beyond this list, I wouldn't want to be in a group setting and say, okay, here's what you need to do. It's going to be the same for all of you, right? I think there's a lot of things that we've gotten away from over years and years of practices and things that maybe used to happen a long time ago. It might be because people didn't really realize like why were we doing that, and they just were doing something that was. Some of these might sound like some of those. Okay, you might have heard some of these things before, but the first thing we're going to talk about is your tongue. Just like really quickly, you've probably heard of tongue scraping, and so I have that the first thing on there. We're going to imagine that you've been sleeping all night, and when you wake up, this is going to be the start of our like little digestion boost list. Okay, so if you could get into a habit of waking up in the morning and the first thing you do is scrape your tongue. Have you ever seen tongue scrapers? They're really basic and they're really inexpensive, but I used to do it with my toothbrush because that's just all I had. And then when I learned about this, I was like, oh, I'm going to get one of those. And it really does make a difference. And so you just stick out your tongue and you scrape it. You're not hurting yourself, but it just kind of pulls off that coating. And the reason why this is important is because when you're sleeping, your body is detoxing naturally. You don't have to do anything for it. Your body just knows that when it's in sleep mode, it's going through all the processes of being in a restful mode rather than in a digestive mode, like breaking down food. And it knows what to do. It knows how to detox. But sleep's super important, right? So when you wake up, if you scrape your tongue, everything that you have been detoxing through the night is on, and I'm not going to say everything that you're detoxing, but there are toxins on your tongue now because that is part of its job. And if you don't scrape your tongue, then you're just kind of swallowing that stuff and you're digesting it. And then the next thing you could do is the second one on the list is to drink a tall glass. I drink until I'm like, okay, I'm full of water. 8 ounces, 12 ounces of warm water first thing in the morning after you've scraped your tongue. Then it actually relaxes your digestive system. And the idea of that, instead of being like cold water or ice water, is that we want to relax our digestive system. We don't want it to be tight and it's going to be restricted if it's cold. And it's supposed to relax us. And the idea is that it's going to, I said relax the bowels, and then the next statement would be so that you will go to the bathroom. The body gets used to that's when we eliminate. So if it's something that you already are doing, your body's already on that cycle, then that's great. You can still do this. It's still just relaxing your bowels first thing in the morning. I feel like it kind of wakes me up in a way, like my body knows, oh, I'm awake now, and it's time. It's time for us to kind of function. And then I get really hungry, but I always get really hungry in the morning, and that's a whole nother topic because there's some people that will wake up and I don't need to eat breakfast. I'm not hungry, and so that conversation comes down to how each one of us are different body types when it comes to how much we want to eat, when we want to eat. So a tall glass of water is a good thing to do, as well as it being warm. And sometimes there's people that like ice water, like they're just like, I just love my stuff really cold. So if you can try to do the warm in the morning, and it's okay if you are a hot digestion, then ice cold water is probably soothing to you. It's still going to be like restricting your insides a little bit, but that may be what you need if you're hot and kind of almost like swollen. But generally, drinking more of like not ice water is typically the best thing for most people's digestive systems, just like in general. We're talking right now about boosting our digestion, so it's not going to solve like every health issue you have, but these are things that aren't going to hurt you, and they're kind of good for everyone. Then the next one is to eat slower. So eating slower helps our digestive system really break down our food better. And so something you could do is saying, okay, I'm going to breathe in between bites, or putting your fork down. And those are just ideas of ways to slow down. But to try to, if you're not sure how long a meal takes, you could time it. And if it's like 10 or 15 minutes, you can say, okay, I'm going to try to get to 20 minutes, knowing that that's kind of spreading out your eating time. Another boosting your digestion is drinking herbal tea. Herbs are medicine, or they are plants that grow that provide so many nutrients that we don't necessarily get from other foods. And so it's like this, I kind of call it, it's like a magical food, superfoods. And it's because they are so packed with nutrients that you get a lot in just a small amount. And so that's why it's superfoods. And I think of herbs that way too, but it's hard to ingest a lot of herbs, right? Maybe if you're drinking herbal tea, the tea bag's only that big, and there's not that much herb in there, but it is powerful for the amount that's in there. Like, it does work. So many good herbal teas that are really good for digestion. Ginger is always a good one. Turmeric is a good one for like inflammation, which generally is happening in our gut. Digestive types, we're talking about someone that's hot, which means they break down food really quickly and really well. And then there's someone that has a cold digestion. That's just how your digestive system is. And so then we would encourage someone to eat food that's warm and more soft if they had cold digestion. And then the other one is just kind of in the middle. Like, isn't it interesting that we each have different digestive types? I didn't know that till I really dove into it. And so understanding that we don't have to compare ourselves to someone else or think that we have, if they can eat that way, I should be eating that way too. So understanding our digestive types would obviously be helpful, but let's pretend like you don't know that. And so these things that we're going over are things that like still help everyone. But what I like about the herbal tea list is it goes through and tells you what the herbs do, what they're for, what they're best for. So we can learn a lot from herbs, and they can help us a lot with everything. The list is really long. And so I really think I've always loved herbal tea. And so I make it a habit to make some in the morning. And even if I don't drink it right then when it's hot, because I do like warm drinks because I am the colder type, I will let it cool down and still drink it. And drinking it cold is something that like I'll just stick it in my container and still drink it throughout the day. So I feel like, hey, I'm still getting my medicine. I didn't, even though I forgot to take it this morning. Or it could be something you could do at night. Let's say at night you are a snacker, because that tends to happen to a lot of us. We've been busy during the day. We're working really hard. Maybe we didn't eat enough because we were busy and we didn't take the time to eat enough. And we're finally home, and we sit down and we relax and it's like, I'm hungry. Or we just get in the habit of doing that. Like if you're sitting and watching a movie, you have to eat popcorn, right? Like that's just part of watching a movie. And so we get ourselves sometimes in habitual patterns that aren't necessarily helping us. I have always loved popcorn. But once I found out my body type and my digestive type, popcorn was actually not the food for me. And I was amazed at how much better I felt by not eating it, even though like I really loved it, you know, but it's, to me, it was so much more worth how I felt inside. And so if I either replaced it with finding something else to snack on, or something that I've been working on is actually not snacking at all. One thing for me was that herbal tea, drinking that at night when those munchies are coming on. There are some that are really good at making you not feel hungry anymore. So there's lots of different kinds of herbal tea. And surprisingly, that would work. But then sometimes people will ask me, well, I can't drink that late at night. Then I will have to pee in the middle of the night. I don't want to do that. But I promise you that if your body is in a pattern of eating in a way that's working for you, that drinking something, even if it's right before bed, will not affect that. I don't want someone to shy away from drinking something that could really benefit you in that detox process as you're sleeping, thinking it's what's making you pee when you've already been getting up every night for the last 10 years to go pee. Anyways, so morning or night, hot or cold, it's still really great. The next thing on the list is to cut back on the amount of sugar that we eat daily. And I just put on here 5 grams or less. That's kind of like a per serving, or like if you're eating something that has a label. So it's a guide. So reading labels is a really great thing to do, just to be more aware of how much added sugar you're getting. Every time you eat added sugar, I'm not talking about things that are sweet like fruit or other things. That could be the case for someone if we're talking about diabetes or other things like that, but just generally speaking, added sugar causes inflammation inside of all of our bodies, no matter what amount you eat. So obviously the less amount we eat of it, the less inflammation you're going to have, but you are going to have some from that sugar. The way that sugar is processed, the way that the product is, the bleached nothingness to it, it causes inflammation in our body. And I believe mostly it's because our body doesn't really recognize it as a nutrient. And we don't want to have inflammation inside of us, especially in our digestive system. And this is the one area that we can kind of control inflammation. Whereas there's going to be times you're going to get inflammation if you get like an injury. That kind of inflammation is good because it's there to be an acute treatment to heal something in your body. But the inflammation that's inside of your gut is the stuff that makes us have gas and bloating and uncomfortableness, and not feeling the way that our digestive system is intended to feel. So that's why we have the conversation about sugar. Often people want to get away from eating it, but they just don't know how. And it seems really tough to do because it's like something that tastes good and it makes us feel good, and there's a lot of it available. And I believe it really is the culprit of a lot of the issues that like people will have with digestive stuff. The next one is to drink water in between meals and not with meals. I learned through my digestive course as well as the doctor's office I worked in that that would be better for people not to be drinking so much, especially iced water with their meals, because then it's restricting your digestive tract while you're trying to eat and it's making it tougher on you. Restaurants, and they are habitually feeding us water, at the table or some sort of drink. And it's just a habit that we've all gotten into in our society. It's not necessarily how it is in all countries, but for sure that is here. So it's just something to be aware of. It doesn't mean that you can't have some sips of water. You could ask for it with no ice. And sometimes people will say, I don't know, water tastes gross. I get that. Totally get that. I am definitely a water snob, and I can tell like water does taste different. And the reason why is because there are minerals, or there may be other things in the water, and you can taste it. So obviously good quality water, again, that's a whole nother conversation. There's a podcast on there about water as well. It kind of goes into like what water's about, what can we do? Why do we need water? You've heard that growing up too, right? Like we're made up of a lot of water and we need water. But then now we've got like plastic bottled waters and different habits that, weren't the case maybe when we were all younger either. And so now we've got that issue going on with plastics and all the different things. And so sometimes you can just feel like your head's going to explode with like well, what do I do then? I just want to eat and I just want to drink. But just knowing that if there's ways we can drink water, I put on here you could add electrolytes to your water. If somebody doesn't necessarily like the taste of water, that's not their favorite thing to drink, that could be something that could help, because electrolytes are the minerals that are in electrolytes are like calcium, potassium, sodium. So you've heard of these before, right? And individually, well, like sodium salt. I know potassium's good for me. I know magnesium's good for me. I know I need calcium for my bones. If we are sweating or working out or even just being alive, we are getting rid of some of those minerals through our sweat. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we're getting enough of those. So most of us don't have enough minerals, and so it's a great way to get them. And there's a lot of companies that are now selling electrolyte packets or powders or whatever that aren't sweetened. So that's kind of the way to go. It could be sweetened with stevia. Again, that's a bigger part of the conversation with the sugar topic, that stevia is not the same thing as the white sugar that I'm talking about. So like differentiating between the two, or the many, there's other ones too that are natural sweeteners. They're not artificial sweeteners, and they're not white processed cane sugar. Just knowing that taking a deep breath is so healing for your body. It is bringing in oxygen, especially if you can breathe in really deep and get it really low. And my little tip of the day is, if nothing else, anytime you think about it, try to take 3 deep breaths, like 3 times a day. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that exact number. It's just kind of a good. I always try to base things, everything around mealtime, because I'm gonna eat, so then I'll remember to take my vitamins, and I'll remember to drink my water after, and I'll remember to take my deep breaths. Right? Like I do everything kind of around mealtime. You'd be amazed that it actually even calms you down. So it is a technique you've probably heard before. Like you forgot all day, and right before bed you do it. Just get some of that oxygen way down into you before you go to sleep, and it'll do wonders. Okay, so we're gonna say take 3 deep breaths before your meals. Even better, but 3 times a day. Okay, then the next one's eat 3 balanced meals a day. One thing to let you know is that we have a kind of a habit of dinner being our biggest meal, but lunch should be our biggest meal. Now, whether that happens for you or not, I'll just tell you the logic behind it. Our body goes through cycles, just like the sun goes through cycles, or sleep is a cycle, all these different things. And so you may notice that during the day you have more energy at certain times. Maybe you're really energetic in the morning, or maybe you're more of an afternoon. I don't know. Maybe there's people that get their energy in the evening. It could be, right? But generally, we're working really hard from once we get up until it's finally time to relax and rest. And so we may need the most calories, the most food in the middle of the day. Digestion takes 60% of our energy. So that's why if someone is like an athlete, they're not eating minutes before they're going and running a marathon. And it's typically because the way our body feels when we do that, it doesn't work for us. Now, it's not to say you can't do that. Again, everybody's body is different, but the general rule of thumb is that our body is spending a lot of energy to digest, and it's super important. And the body wants to focus on that to do it right. But if something else is happening, if that tiger is chasing you and you have to run, it is going to focus on your legs moving rather than digesting. And so then that food's going to kind of sit in there and wait its turn, because fight or flight has to come first. And so it's just something to think about, that not eating too big of a meal at dinner time at night, especially if it's late, especially if you're eating dinner at 5, it's still early enough, right? Unless you're like an 8 o'clock bedtime person, but typically speaking. But if someone's eating dinner like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, you just don't want that to be like a really, really big meal. So that's just like a general rule of thumb. But 3 balanced meals. So we need to listen to our body. And this is something that if we were talking one-on-one and we got more into depth about you specifically, we could kind of get to the bottom of how you operate, and would 2 meals be okay for you. So the kapha type, which is the water type, and the kind of the middle digestion type, generally speaking, they can go longer without eating and or less meals. Generally speaking, if we can get to ourselves to a point where we're eating 3 balanced meals, and I'm going to tell you what a balanced meal is. What it is that we need for a balanced meal is that we need to make sure that we're getting all of the nutrients. I'll tell you what nutrients are. There's 6 nutrients. I want you guys to try to guess what. You know them all, but just Throw out something you think is a nutrient. Fat. Good. That's a nutrient. Protein. You know, there's a third one that goes with these two. Fat. Yep, and carbs. So you've heard of these as macronutrients. What the micronutrients are. And you know, macro just means you need more of these, and micro just means you need less of what. What are the micronutrients? What's that? Minerals is a micronutrient. Vitamins, good. Okay, so those are our micros. And then there's this one over here. It's like the most important thing we need in our body. What is it? Water is one of the nutrients. So we know it's really important, but if our meals have fat and carbs and protein, which typically everything we eat is going to have some form of that, but what is tending to happen, what we're noticing, is that these are getting out of balance, right? Like maybe we have a lot of carbs or a lot of fat. Most of the time people don't have too much protein in a meal, but you could, like there are definitely ways that could happen, but typically it's carbs are really easy to get, and fat. There's a lot of fats, micronutrients, because those are our vitamins and minerals, and our body cannot survive without them. So when we see someone that is like really breaking down and degrading and having operations inside of their body not working, it is typically a vitamin or mineral deficiency. And you've heard that before, right? Like there's certain things that like it's very specific. If you are deficient in whatever this is what will manifest, you know. But we're noticing more of a widespread of just not getting, you know, enough of these things, and it causing everything from just not sleeping well to not having bowel movements at all. And it is part of our operations not working properly, and it's really causing havoc. Eating to only 80% full so that we're satisfied but not stuffed. This is a hard one because depending on how we've grown up or how we've done things, so it's just something to kind of look at, like where am I at when I eat? And this gives our actual stomach this little bit of room in there for it to do the job that it needs to do. And otherwise, if that's too full, sometimes that can be reasons why we feel it come up. Kind of listening to how we feel, and sometimes people have gotten numb to even being full or like what it feels like. So it might take some time to but just being aware of something like that could help. All right. And then eating in a relaxed manner. So no standing, TV, driving, or politics. Okay, so I'll tell you why that stuff's on there. And the main thing for like standing is probably for like busy moms, we're like running around and we're just going to eat while we're standing. And we're not taking that time to relax. Our digestive system feels emotions. Like even though we might think like we feel it here, or maybe I kind of feel it here, like we really feel it here. And anything you're feeling is actually happening to your digestive system. So, and like how many of you, like if you get nervous, like you can't eat? That happens to all of us because there's a connection there. And so if we can minimize feeling emotions that we don't have to be feeling in that moment and relax and eat, it makes a difference on how we process our food. So that's why it says no standing. It doesn't mean that you can never stand while you're eating. If you're super relaxed and you're standing, I'm sure it would be okay. And the same thing like with driving. Often I'm eating while I'm driving. So what I try to do is take my deep breaths. I'm in the car. I can be eating in a relaxed state. Is that ideal? No, but this is just a guideline of how do you feel when you're driving. Maybe that's not the best time to be eating, right? Like when in a hurry. Maybe it's thinking of people like going through a drive-through and you're hurrying, so then it's an under 20-minute meal and I'm stressed and I got to hurry up and get back to work, right? And so none of the conditions are quite right for eating. And then the politics. That's just usually because that could get someone fired up. It's just a funny example. And then there was a little bonus one before meals. So if you have any issues with digesting food, you've noticed that when you eat, and maybe you can't put your finger on it's a certain food or it's a certain behavior or anything, something you could do to just try, like step one before the next step of like going to a doctor or doing the next thing, could be to drink some warm water before you're going to eat. This would be about a half an hour before. And you could put in a pinch of salt. you could put in lime or lemon and a slice of ginger. You could do all three of those or one of them. Now, salt is an electrolyte. Lemon and lime, believe it or not, even though they seem acidic, are not. They're alkaline. And if you have questions about pH stuff, again, that's a whole other conversation. I do have a pH list that I put together on my website as well. And then the ginger helps stimulate digestion. So this is a really good suggestion for someone that just, okay, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to see how this meal that I've eaten before, I know maybe I felt gas or bloaty or something after eating it. I'm going to try this and just see if it makes a difference. Because these things are things that do help your digestive system. Now, obviously, it might not solve all the issues because there could be a lot of other things going on as well. But it's just one of those little tidbits. So that a pinch of real salt, Himalayan salt, and the difference is that any of these other salts, besides just iodized salt, any of the other ones that are mineral salts, they have minerals in them. And so you're getting those minerals from the salt, not just the sodium, but the other things that are in there. And it binds better in your body. Gas and bloating is the number one indication that our digestive tract, something's not working for it, right? Like if we imagine it like a machine and how it's supposed to be working, something when it's going in, whether it's an emotion or a food, is causing something along the way to not quite run smoothly, right? So as it's going through all of that small intestine and large intestine and each one of them has a job, which is to absorb nutrients and put water in and create our stools. So inflammation is a big conversation when it comes to what's going on inside of our digestive tract. So there's tests we can do for like food sensitivities that those will cause inflammation. So my hope with everything that I've been learning is ways for people just to kind of look at food differently, or even lifestyle is a big thing too. So some of these things that we've gone over are kind of like lifestyle, like eating slower or doing things like that. That we can even have a conversation about, like making sure we're going to bed at a decent time so our body has that whole time to detox and heal. Because if we don't, like sleep's a really important part of that. And easy to digest foods is another part of the conversation when it comes to what can I do right now until I figure out what's going on with me, right? Like if you've got something that's really going on with your digestive tract or someone else that you know, what are some things I could do right now? Well, there are certain foods that are categorized as easy to digest. So it's not going to cause a lot of strain on our digestive system. And none of these things, unfortunately, are going to be packaged or, like easy like that. But basmati rice is just an example. There are obviously some rices, other rices could be too, but basmati specifically is, and like jasmine, they're about the same like looking as far as like, white whole grain rice. They cook really quickly. And so that's kind of a good indicator of if it only takes 4 minutes in my Instapot and it's like 1-to-1 water and it's absorbing that, it's going to be soft and easy to break down. And that's why something like oatmeal is on here, because you do the same thing, right? You add water to the oats and it soaks it up, and now it's kind of in a softer state. Well, that's making it even easier to digest. Berries are an easy to digest food. Fermented foods can be easy to digest. That is going to depend on your digestive system, so that one has got a little caveat to it. Fermented foods are good for people, but not necessary for everyone. Coconut oil is easy to digest. Quinoa, sweet potatoes, sweet peas, any of your squashes, and bone broth. Sometimes if people are really having trouble eating any sort of foods, sometimes they'll just drink just bone broth. Definitely a good go-to food if you're not feeling well. It usually has about 9 to 10 grams of protein in like a cup, which is pretty good because it's really important that we get protein in every single meal that we eat. The amount is different depending on your body and your activity and your needs, but at least 10 grams, at least, just to survive, because we need protein just to like brain function and like everything that we do. And so, and typically that's not hard for people to get protein, but sometimes we'll eat, a meal that even if we're a full-time meat eater, you may eat a meal that just doesn't have meat in it naturally, not because you're trying to not eat it, right? And so you may not have protein in that meal. That's not the only way to get protein. There's many, many plant sources of protein. But it could just be more of just an accidental missed thing as opposed to an intentional thing. Does that make sense? And so just being aware, just make sure there's some protein. It could be an egg in the salad. It could be nuts or seeds. It could be cheese. It could be meat. Just whatever it is that you tend to eat. I have a protein list on my website as well. If you want to go there, and it just gives you a lot of different examples. And you just make sure you're throwing something like that into your salad. And now your salad is packed with nutrients as well as the protein that you need. So that's just an example. Nut milks, ginger is easy to digest. It can be a little warm. It is warming. So depending on how hot of a digestive type you are, sometimes you don't want to do too much ginger, but that's why it's a really great one for like lighting our digestive fire. We want to have fire in our gut. Sometimes our pitta people though are just extra hot. So maybe they're the ones that like get flushed easy, or or angry easy, or really like cold things, ice cream, ice foods, things like that. They might be a hot digestive type. Melons are easy to digest. So the last thing we're just going to go over just really quickly is just steps to transitioning to better health. So this is just to kind of give you some ideas, some things to think about. Anytime we're trying to look at like, what's not working is kind of the first question that we might ask ourselves. And so you might know the answer to that, or you might not. So if it's something that you want to think about, but whatever it is that you want, I feel like we can identify those things, and there's a way to it. It takes some time, because sometimes we're trying to reverse things, and often it's like habits and things that we've had for a long time, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. I don't think that they realize that they can feel that good too. Like, they just feel like they're stuck. Really feel like there's hope out there for anyone that wants it, and it doesn't have to be something that you do that's like super, super hard, really, really fast. It could be a slow, progressive thing. And so that's why I thought it would be fun to introduce these things, because what would it be like for you if in this moment you feel one way, and after you do, even if it's just a few of these things, and you notice a difference? How amazing would that be for you? Because they were free, and I'd like to say they're easy. I know nothing is easy. Like, everything takes effort, but easy for the most part. Like, you didn't have. So then after you identify like what maybe isn't working, you can make a goal for yourself. And again, that's going to be different for every person. And the next step could be looking at your pantry. Often our pantry and what we kind of have in our house can be kind of the bad guy, right? Like, it's causing some of the problems. And often that means that we need to get rid of some of that food that's causing the problems. Because if anyone is like my husband, he'll say, but if it's there, I'm going to eat it. He's like, I'm on a seafood diet. I see it and I eat it. And so once, back to his story, back when we started with him, that was the first thing he needed me to do. He's like, well, this stuff can't be here. You can't have this for the kids or for this event or this other thing, because then I'm going to eat it. I'm like, okay. So the first step is removing that. And so then I said, well, maybe we can replace it with some other foods or other examples of things that you can have that could still be enjoyable, but they won't cause the problems. And so that seemed to be the thing that worked for him, was getting rid of some of that food that wasn't working. And then learning to read labels, being aware of what's in your food, buying more vegetables and whole food supplies. We can do that more in our lives. And then creating some simple meals outside of the box or traditions. So the reason why I put this is because I think sometimes we get stuck kind of in like maybe something that our family's eaten your whole life. And so there's comfort around that, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we want to change something that tends to happen in our family line, my dad got that, I'm going to get that. But it's only because we tend to follow the same patterns of our ancestors, or whoever we're closest to. And so anytime we make a change, it's going to change our outcome. And so if we can still have traditions and things maybe that we've eaten that you may say, oh, that's probably not working in my new goal or my new plan. But it's okay to have something, like if you have like the 90% rule, 90% of the time I'm going to eat the way I'm supposed to eat, and maybe this time when we do this family thing or we do this thing, it's okay. Breakfast has always been a hard conversation for people that I've worked with that, let's say they have an egg allergy, or let's say they have an egg, dairy, and gluten. They're like, what am I supposed to eat? Like, because breakfast is all about, eggs or meat or whatever it is. We found some very creative solutions to things that you can eat. Now, it's not the same thing, and so sometimes that's difficult, but nobody says that you have to eat breakfast foods for breakfast. You can eat whatever you want. So just like kind of thinking outside the box that way, like I can do what I want to do. I don't have to, get stuck in certain ways. In keeping a food journal, if there's ever any questions about maybe something that you're not sure is bothering you when you're eating food, that's a really great way to kind of keep an eye on it, because digestion ideally would happen in like 6 to 9 hours. We eat and it travels through us, and 6 hours to 9 hours later, it's out of us. But there are some caveats to that, because just pork itself takes 9 hours to digest. And then like some of the meats, you go backwards from that, they take a little bit less and a little bit less. And that's why a lot of times, people say, oh, you should eat lean meats, but why? Like chicken, turkey, and then fish is kind of its own category. They digest faster, they break down easier. That's the only reason why that's said. It doesn't mean that you can't have the other meats if those are something that you enjoy. But just being aware that it takes a little bit longer to digest, that your body's putting that energy in there to do that, right? And so you're gonna want to support it while it's doing that, and not, eat that and then, like I said, go run a marathon, do something like that. So keeping a food journal can help us kind of see patterns, whether it's how we feel before we eat, emotionally, or just like what's going on even long term, and then how that affects our digestion, and then the time, what we ate, and then like how we felt after. And so like kind of watching, because sometimes someone will feel something like right away, you eat something and you're like, oh, that itches my mouth, or oh, I'm starting to feel bubbly right away, or whatever it is. But sometimes things take longer, right? And you're like, oh, I have a headache. And because I know I had this friend that had headaches for the longest time, and I'm like, well, let's talk about like what you're eating in the pattern. She's like, well, but what I ate is fine. Well, it was from like 24 hours ago, not from the last meal. Because things that get deeper into our body, especially like, like kind of traveling and having to go from our blood to get to where it goes, is going to take longer than I felt itchy here, or inflammation here, which caused gas and bloating, right? So there's different time segments to the symptoms that we'll feel. There's a lot of other factors too, but a food journal can help with that, and you can write that stuff down. Something that I do if I work with someone is part of the intake does have them like list like their meals for the last 3 days, because then we can kind of see a pattern just of what they tend to eat, and then listening to your body, because it will always tell you what you need and what isn't working. And I'm going to say sometimes we do get numb if we've been in a chronic state for a long time, and so it is harder to feel. But I think once we become aware that we want to listen, we will hear it, we will feel it. If one of your goals is I'm going to listen to my body more, or I want to get to the bottom of something, then I think it'll open up for you. I think sometimes people think that they're going to have to go from whatever their current habits are to like making everything from scratch. And that's not realistic for everyone. And so I always like to, list that there are things like frozen organic veggies, so you can still get organic if that's something that's important to you. Even like Costco carries them in bulk. Their bags are huge, so you have a big freezer. But it's really cool that they have options, a lot of like organic options. And ground flax seeds are a great way to get a superfood in you. Remember, you don't need very much of it to get the benefits from it. But then like I put shredded carrots because I love making salads and stir fries and other things where I can put carrots in there. And I think that is one of the best little hacks, because it's like $1 something for the bag. I know carrots are cheap, but grating it like is so tiring. And whenever I need help, I look around and like my kids disappear at the time I need someone to grate something. I'm like, dang it, I want to sit here and grate these carrots. So I love the shredded carrots because I can use them in all sorts of stuff. They're really great. And then like even cabbage and the broccoli slaw, they carry organic and like already chopped. And broccoli slaw isn't something I've actually made a slaw out of, but it's the broccoli shredded just like the carrots. And you could also stick it in a stir fry or scrambled eggs, or like, I just love having stuff like that on hand, because then it's easier to say I can use these vegetables really quickly because they're like already prepared. And avocados are a really good superfood, and that they sell like little guacamole cups, but sometimes it's even just like avocados. like nothing else in it. So that's kind of fun because you can season it how you want. And the ones that are seasoned are perfectly fine too, but maybe you want it as avocado and not just guacamole. But it's just a great way, again, in the wasting category, you know, you get an avocado and you have good intentions and you want to use it, and then it like gets too soft and then it's brown. And I'm like, oh, I was planning on avocado in the meal tonight, and then it's brown and you know, you cry about it. So like at least when I pull out that avocado cup, it's not brown and it's there and it's ready. So that like always makes me really happy that I can just use that quick. Organic corn tortillas, I really feel strongly about getting corn, and there's certain foods, organic and non-GMO. And so corn is one of those ones that's high on the list that is GMO'd, if that's a word, a lot. So we got cane sugar, you got corn, you got soybeans, canola. I'm sure I'm missing one or two others, but like they're just like, unless it's organic and non-GMO, it is GMO. Like that's just like how that item is grown, and we just grow a lot of it. And I just felt really strongly that was really important. And so I love that, like at Costco, they also sell organic corn tortilla chips. And so I know they're a few bucks more. It's a big bag, but it just feels like, okay, I'm doing what I can to try, you know, to eat a little bit better. And then the start an ingredient in advance or in bulk. I've done, you know, rice and beans and all. So I like to do like a staple of something that maybe I'm going to put into a meal. And I say maybe because, you know, sometimes things change. I like made the beans in the morning and now that's not what we're having for dinner. But I have good intentions, and you can start that early. But also the Instant Pot's really fast. So if you're like, dinner, half an hour, what can I make? I still sometimes can throw something pretty quick together by using the Instant Pot to cook one of those ingredients that would take a long time otherwise. So it just is one of those really helpful tools. So thanks for listening to me while I talk really fast to try to get in as much information as I can.